Welcome to Innovation Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. Today, back with the mini-series, Longevity for Investors, with my great co-host, Dr. Greg Bailey. He's a co-founder at Medivation, which built an incredible drug for cancer that helps people live years longer than they would have, called Extendi. And then at Biohaven, a migraine drug called Nurtec, two of the top 10 biggest biotech successes in the last decade. These days, he's chairman of Juvenescence, helping modify aging, help us all not die from chronic diseases. And we've got a really exciting guest. And I'm excited because there's a bunch of things that Yaky's got to talk to us about that I've been hearing like glimmers of from Greg. So now I'm really interested to hear what Greg's questions are. Greg, why don't I let you take it away?
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to hear you speak to you, Yaky, and get your perspective on an area that I'm really intrigued with, which I believe is you're also working on artificial meat, or not, artificial is probably the wrong word, cellular generated meat. So how would you describe what your company Pluri does? And then we can also like to talk about IAT.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here. And you guys, I heard a few of your podcasts, and I'm so glad to speak with people that are so up to it in the method of aging. So Pluri is about sales. Pluri is about sales. We are a company that in the last 2 decades, we devoted our time, efforts, money, resources, and I see it is the project of my life, to be able to create product out of these tiny organisms. I'm doing sales for 20 years. I'm impressed by sales. I always say that we should remember that cells are the building blocks of life. Everything on this planet is built from cells. We are built from cells, animals, plants. Well, that's God, tiny coding capabilities. And everything that they do is to see how we can use this organism on a variety of indications to create products that we need, from drugs to food to so many different things. And I'm a big cell lover.
So for our audience, how would you describe what you do that other people don't do? How do you manipulate cells? And you have, I think, over 140 patents. What is the magic that you do?
Pluri is a very technological company. We devoted our capabilities and effort in order to create the systems that will allow us to expand cells very effectively. The magic or the technology around what we are doing is trying to mimic creation. I always like to call it that we hold even a modest approach, because in most of the decision making that I do of my career, I'm trying to understand what is the natural way that the cells behave, and to try to learn the concept around it. So the one thing that is unique about our technology, that we are growing the cells in a tissue-like environment. You probably know bioreactors, and everybody growing cells either on a petri dish, flask, and some people grow them in bioreactor in suspension. But our approach is very straightforward, saying cells, most of the cells that you know, and you just need to take a good look on your body, are growing in a tissue-like environment. Very small portion of the cells are actually growing suspension. Only the cells that we have in our bloodstream. And that's led to the concept, or to the understanding that this is the way that cells like to grow in. We grow them in a packed bed reactor, so that we kind of lock them in a packed bed system, growing them on carriers, allow them to adhere to the carriers and to expand in a very natural environment. We allow our cells to have a three-dimensional environment, so they can communicate and interact with their environment. Cells are friendly creatures. They need to build their society, really. As we as human beings interact, cells are interacting. It happens in our body naturally, and in our bioreactor, we gave them the environment to be able to interact naturally. And eventually, with the 140 patents and 20 years of knowledge in expanding cells, we created a system that is also very, very, very effective. we can create hundreds of billions of cells. And today, in some of our spin-outs, we spin out several activities. We are starting to talk about creating hundreds of kilos of cells, which is insane. But this is what we do. And that's something that will allow us to have the perfect batch-to-batch consistency, but also production on scale, because in my approach, every human being on this planet should be able to get access to cells. And Pluri's technology will be able to make it happen.
Two big things you mentioned there. One is universal cell lines, because then it can be in every hospital in the world. And the second one is scale. So I really want to punch that as being a unique and extraordinary thing around Pluri. So you have this tissue-like environment by which you can grow tissues and cellular combinations. What are your first two or three products in humans and just in general? What are your first three products that your company's focused on?
So on the therapeutic vertical that we have, which is of course the one that is most relevant for aging, we are very focused on using placenta cells. I love cells, but I even like better placenta. Placenta cells is the concept. We are talking about
Why?
an allogeneic product that people should use easily. And a physician should be able to administer it, in my opinion, easily to every human being.
Can I stop you for 1 minute, Yaky? Describe for the audience, allogenic versus
Autologous.
what is an allogenic cell?
So allogenic cell is basically a cell that you can take from a donor, expand them, and to administer them to any other human being without genetic match or blood match. The other approach is using autologous treatment, when you're taking the cells from the patient itself, expand them and bringing it back to the patients. The difference is the allogenic, or with the no match, like one size, one cell fits all, you can go to expenses very broadly and to have it like a more drug application. And autologous is kind of more a service or patient by patient approach. We chose the placenta. I like to call placenta the miracle of birth. Think of pregnancy. I mean, we used to see, we are seeing pregnant women all day long. And for us, well, we think it makes sense because we're used to see that. In my opinion, and the more I learn about placenta cells, it's nothing short than a magic. Immunological magic, I like to call it. When you have two immune systems, when a pregnant woman, we are holding two immune systems, the mother and the baby, that somehow coexist without rejection of the one against the other. And we all know that the mother can be a surrogate mother. She can carry someone else's child, which has a different genetic, totally different genetic, but still she'll be able to carry the child. And the organ that modulates all of this amazing immunological discussion is the placenta, which is missing part of the marker that's going to make it visible for the immune system. And this is what allows us to take young, potent, donated placentas, to expand them quite significantly with our systems, and eventually to treat people across the globe without genetic match or blood match. We have treated over 1,000 patients to date. The good thing is that we are able to...
For what pathologies, Yaky? Circle back. What therapies are you... and then I'll turn it over to Jess to explore the uses of your system in real life.
Today, we are treating patients with ischemic legs conditions, so patients with a very poor blood flow into the leg in a high risk for amputation. We have a very interesting collaboration with the Charité of Berlin, which is the largest clinical center in Europe for knee osteoarthritis. We're having a very interesting collaboration with the US NIH and the Department of Defense, using one of the cell types that we have in order to enhance recovery after hematological recovery after exposure to very high level of nuclear radiation. There are with the concept to build the therapeutics, to be able to treat population if, God forbid, will be exposed to very high level of radiation. And the way that we like to work and collaborate is having a partner that understands the need, and a specific need, the go-to-market approach. Pluri operates as a developer of the product and the enabler of the manufacturing. And remember, with this technology that we have, from a single placenta today, we can treat over 20,000 patients. This is what our technology allows us. And the combination of placenta and scale, I love it. I think it's a very good combination.
Yaky, first, I want to talk about exactly what Greg said, but I want to start with any advantages that you think being based in Haifa. I just finished the book Startup Nation, and I've had so many great Israeli entrepreneurs on the show before, but after reading that book and hearing just how many folks have decided, no, we're going to succeed regardless of what's going on geopolitics or conflict-wise, investors can trust us no matter what. Anyways, I so much respect for the entire country after reading that book. But I would love to know any advantages of doing biotech, both in Israel and Europe and the US. And then, like Greg said, I'd love to hear more about applications so I can go home and explain it to my kid in junior high.
So operating from Israel, of course, has its own challenges. But the good things of operating from Israel, that you can hire Israelis, which is you have a good access to these people. And I think that one thing today, and I see the CEO of a company, the team here, my team, and I'm also very involved in the Israeli high-tech and life science. I used to chair the largest organization for high-tech and life science in Israel, the Israeli Advanced Technology Industry, representing the life science. I'm still on the board of this organization because it's extremely important to build the ecosystem. And I must say that every time that I come to Boston and I see this ecosystem, I envy a little bit. And my goal is to try to see how we can do it here. So you have a bunch of talented guys that are willing to do non-conventional things, hard workers, extremely committed to the goal, and they're going to do everything it takes to make it happen. I think that's the main thing. The level of commitment is uncomparable. And sometimes, as CEO, I need to tell them, guys, Saturdays or Friday, you're not working. I need you to take a day off to make sure that you're going to be fresh on Sunday. But I think the level of talent and commitment is quite unique. Obviously, there are a bunch of very good hubs across the globe. And also the teams in Israel are very good communicators, so they're able to interact globally. I always say, when you're having a business in Israel, when you're having a company in Israel, your business is always outside of Israel. It's a great location, but only 9 million people, so you need to be able to do it elsewhere. And I love it. I'm proud of doing it from here. It's not an easy time for us right now, but we know that we'll be able to do whatever it takes to make it happen. And this is where we're devoting our time.
That's great. So I want to ask about the reducing the effects of exposure to nuclear. So, I read all these spy books, and there's always, some terrorist group is going to melt down a nuclear reactor or release a dirty bomb or things like this. Those books are going to get a lot less scary if now all of a sudden there's these ways to combat it. But if I have to go home and explain to my 13-year-old how you can take stuff from the placenta and now all of a sudden hospitals around the world could have a medicine to counteract a terrible situation like that. Can you help me explain it in a way that everyone could understand?
Yeah, I think it's quite easy to understand. We all know that in case of radiation, basically what's happening in radiation, the level, let's not get into the mechanism, but it actually breaks the DNA of the cells that in the process of doubling themselves. Okay, and cells that expand or doubling quickly, like our bone marrow cells or like the stem cells that create our bloodlines, are very vulnerable cells. So in case of very high level of exposure to very high level of nuclear radiation, the damage basically happens on the bone marrow cells, in our stem cells, in the body stem cells. And we need the stem cells in order to create our white cells, our red, and our platelet. So this is like the factory of creation of the cell lines that we need in order to make sure that we're not going to bleed, or to be able to deliver oxygen, or having our immune system. And what we are able to show, that if we take these placenta cells that are coming from a healthy donor and inject them into a patient with a window of 48 hours after exposure to radiation, what our cells are doing once they are injected into the body, they start to interact and to communicate with the body. Well, it's not a surprise. Now when we are talking, all of us, there is tons of discussion. There's a lot of discussion in our body. Cells speak with each other by cell-to-cell interaction, or biological signal, biological or chemical signaling. The good thing about the placenta cells, they understand the language. I always like to say they're native speakers. They understand the language of the body, so they can read the signals that they get from the body, which can be break of cells, increase of level of inflammation, etc. And our cells are like small factories that start to secrete different biologics. And we know that in order to preserve the remaining of hematopoietic cells, you need a certain cytokines, you need a certain protein that will protect the cells. And then they kick in and starting to support the reproduction of the hematopoietic cells, which are the cells that we needed to create our bloodlines. So when using our cells, first of all, we are doing the preservation of the reservoir of hematopoietic cells, and allow them to proliferate now much better and faster. And it's quite amazing to see that. In the NIH, they did like 50 different preclinical studies in order to show that, and each and every time it went the same exact thing. We're seeing that if we inject our cells, while the placebo population, we see like 30% survival. And so small amount of animals survive because they either bleed or die from infection. While the treated group that got the placenta cells, we see close to 100% survival. And that's repeated each and every time. Quite amazingly, when we did this project with the NIH, with the NIAID of the NIH, DoD also saw this data, and they entered to a separate agreement with us, and they asked us this time to test it in a prophylaxis manner. So like kind of a vaccination against radiation, if you like to say, which makes a lot of sense, because if we're going to have a radiation event, our military will be the first responders, and you want to reduce the damage to the guys, of course, as much as possible. The data was quite impressive. And also in a prophylaxis manner, we saw that we can increase survival from like 4%, DoD going on extreme doses. So it was like from 4% to about 74%. And that's a very meaningful difference. And this is what the placenta do. And radiation is not only radiation, it's not only doomsday event. We should look also the application. The number of people in this world increase. We all need energy. And today, I think there is an understanding globally that nuclear facilities are probably the most dominant solution in order to provide solution to the increasing demand in energy. So yeah, we do want to have this PLX-R18 available, that in, God forbid, there's going to be an event, they'll be able to mitigate part of the damages.
Yeah. Greg, I know you understood more of those words than I did, and I understood most of them. What kind of ideas has it come up for you?
At first, I thought Yaky was going to say it was like a bone marrow transplant. You're just giving fresh, healthy cells, but it sounds like it goes far beyond that. And what I would also point out, it was one of the most amazing pictures I've seen under an electron microscope, was the two cells. And literally, they had tentacles coming out of the cell where they literally touch each other to interact. So there's a whole world of communication, as Yaky explains, that's going on within your body that we are unaware of. And one of our companies, has been trying to unlock using supercomputers the message that takes an embryo to a fetus. And basically, when that happens, the cell lines that constitute every cell in your body and every type of tissue begin to interact. And it's through ionometers, electrical charges, that they chat with each other. And if I can understand what they're saying to create a hand in an amputee, I could regrow the hand, because I would just send that same electrical message. So this is just a fascinating area. Science fiction is becoming science. Accolades to your company, Yaky. Your company's public?
Yeah, our company is public in NASDAQ under ticker symbol PLUR. And yeah, I echo
So if
everything
somebody
that you said.
likes the story, sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying I'm echo with everything that you said. The interaction between the cells, and if, like, your company will be able to understand even part of the discussion, that's going to open so many opportunities for us to provide a much better therapies for the patients.
Yeah, and in the context of longevity and aging, our organs get run down, our skin gets run down by sunlight, our tissues get not destroyed but changed by gravity. So what we can do, Yaky's doing to refresh, is extraordinary. So if somebody wanted to invest, listening to your story, Yaky, and wanted to invest, very easy for them to go on to NASDAQ. PLUR is the symbol.
PLUR is the sticker.
And if they were interested in investing directly, I presume, just again, your LinkedIn and Jess, and you'll go over that at the end. It really remarkable. So some of the other applications to tantalize and excite the audience, besides that you'd like to describe, because the radiation one is fascinating, particularly the prophylaxis or the vaccine almost that you're giving. What else are you working on in humans? And then maybe you could touch on what you're doing with foods.
So we have several other applications that we are developing. We are very focused on the placenta, as I mentioned. We have a collaboration with the Charité of Berlin for a knee osteoarthritis study. I think that most of us.
What are you doing there?
Well,
because lots of people claim to have stem cell therapies for the knee, and basically, to me, they're anti-inflammatories. They're not really doing anything meaningful.
So cells are anti-inflammatories, but we are also seeing the muscle that surround the knee, like the quadricep, etc. We published, we have quite strong phase 2 and phase 3 data showing the ability of the cells to increase muscle volume and muscle force once you inject them statistically significant against placebo. And that's something that will be, in my opinion, quite interesting. I do believe that generally, and I got to this industry 20 years ago because of what you guys are doing, aging. I don't think I saw too many people in the world that can say that they build their career because of one graph. I'm a guy like that. I was in the high-tech industry 20 years ago, and I saw this graph of change in aging and longevity in the last 150 years. And it literally blew my mind. I said, okay, just can be. I mean, the numbers can be true. And I was looking deeply into it and understood that, yeah, these are the numbers. And that's what brought me to develop in my life in order to build a product that are built from cells. Because in my opinion, that's the only way to be able to continue to treat our elderly and patients with dignity and respect. We need to move from the chronic to regeneration, and this is what cells do. And that's the reason that I'm devoting everything that I do here. Today I'm treating patients, which is great, but I'm saying that we all deserve cells when we are in good health. We don't need to be sick in order to get cells. This is what I do today. And the reason that I believe that aging and longevity is so important, treating it, because that's coming like the most amazing wave in the world that people even can't imagine that. I invest a lot of time to learn about it. China is probably the biggest clinical trial in the world. That we're all going to see the data in 20 years, when we're going to see half a billion people over 60 in just 20 years. And then we need to understand how we are handling a healthcare system or economy when you have 500 million people over 60. And that's going to happen in Israel when we're going to double the amount of people over 70 in just 20 years, and same thing in the US. So it's not only about, nice to have, we all want to live nice and well and to look beautiful at 80. Well, it's critical question for our economies, healthcare system, and our kids. So it's something that we need to devote the time. In the last 20 years, I have a very solid clinical data that with our cells, we can treat almost most of the aspects that I'm familiar with that are related to aging. And that's the one thing, biggest question that we have. What is aging and how we can define it? We have a strong muscle, we have a strong data to support that we can increase muscle volume. And as we know, all of us, from age 25, we lose like 0.5% of muscle mass each and every year, which is a shame, but fact of life. We have a very strong data about our ability to support ischemia by doing regeneration and creation of new blood vessels using our cells. We need it for ischemic legs, we need it for cardio. It's a critical part in of course, in aging. We just spoke about the hematological deficiencies. We spoke about it in the context of radiation, but we were able to repeat it also in human studies to show it. And one of the most important things in aging, that we are losing our immune system slowly. And if you're going to be able to build your hematopoietic cells, well, you have a good immune system. And same thing goes for neurodegeneration. We published some very interesting papers around it. So that's the reason that I so believe in cells. And we're using it today for all these applications. We recently even started to build for a very different cell type under immunotherapy application that we're using for placenta cells. And these tiny organisms, I know, because I've seen, as I told you, almost 1,000 patients in different areas, that will be able to modulate, slow, and even reverse some of the aging outcomes. And I believe that we all need cells and treat ourselves while we are still in good health. This is the summary of my approach around cells.
Very excited to hear you say that, and what it generates as far as excitement for this sector, and the fact that we can begin to do it. We're working on treatments like you are right now that could lead to this mitigating the economic time bomb that we have as far as the demographics, which are not going in the favor of most countries.
Yep.
This had to have stimulated a number of questions.
Yeah, Yaky, I actually share your enthusiasm. When Greg and I started doing this about a year ago, and as I started getting into it, I started running into a lot of opposition from doctors and people who saying they're so familiar with today's science, and they're almost limited by it. And they're like, oh, that people have talked about that longevity stuff forever. That's crackpot stuff. That'll never work. And they have gave me all this pessimism. I'm like, well, they're smarter than me. Like, what am I, like, how do I square this? And you talked about that graph of seeing, lifespan extension go up so much. And for me, like so my grandpa was born in 1922. He's my hero. He's kind of like a second father, grew up 4 doors down from me. And life expectancy when he was born was 54 for men, 60 for women. And in 1822, it was like 40, 44. It had gone up 10 years by the time he was born. And then since then, like today, it's 74 for men and 80 for women in the States. It's gone up another 20 years, right? And so this idea of like, oh, this has happened in the past. This isn't some like crazy new idea that doesn't have any basis. Like the previous version of biotech got rid of measles and polio and tuberculosis and these things that were killing everybody. And now that we're living past that, we're living to the next things that kill us. Heart disease, dementia, diabetes, cancer, right? And so the concept that we might actually need new tools to go after chronic diseases than the kind of diseases you could just take an antibiotic for, like that makes sense. And if we can do something about it, the idea of us going up another 10, 20 years, history would support that idea. And it just gave me so much more optimism. And then I just keep meeting people like you who are doing things like you're doing, and like all these things about bioreactors and stuff from the placenta. Like I've heard versions of this from Greg over the last year, and then to hear it from you again, it confirms that there's so much more possible than some people's limited thinking.
I totally agree with you. Homo sapiens is a problematic creature because when we decide about something, well, history shows that we're usually able to get there. And I do see more and more people talking about aging. My first mission is to make sure that we'll be able to have a good quality of life. I always like to say that today we go down the cliff that way. I hope that in our generation, it's going to be like that. We should die healthy. Okay, that's my approach, or close to healthy. And the numbers that you indicated are there. I'm seeing in Israel, women live to 84, men to 80. Without being too emotional, I mean, I just lost my father last week, and that's the bird that you see, and he was at 82. And I told my daughters, probably going to live much, much, much longer than my father. And then he lived in good health. I see it in Japan today, they're getting close to 90 in average. And, as a Jewish, when we have a complicated question, it's good to look at the Bible. And I always asking myself, what is our biological potential? Is it 100, 120? Some people say it's 120. But for all of us that like this concept, I keep reminding us that the first man, Adam, used to live to 930 years. Well, maybe that's an indicator for the theoretical biological potential of human beings, but the first man, at least according to the Bible, 930 years. All right, that's a good start. Let's to see how we can get in a good quality of life, and of course increasing aging and longevity. So we should change a lot. We should change the way that we're treating human beings. We should change our healthcare systems. We should change the way that we are, even when we are treating human beings. This is how I see that. I'm a huge believer in cells. I think that this is so obvious. Just to treat a machine that is built from cells like we are with young, healthy cells. We just need to make sure that it's not easy, as I said, but of course with technology coming, with AI, with a better understanding of the very complex discussion that we see from cells, we have the best shot ever that humanity ever had to be able to understand this phenomena and to defeat it, or at least to prevent part of it. So I think it would be...
One of the first things you said today was so encouraging to me. Greg and I are kind of on a mission to make it more comfortable for people outside biotech to start investing in biotech and to have it not feel like such a black box or not feel scary. And I think one of the things that has attracted so much investment is what you said. This idea that cells in some ways are a little bit like a computer where they're programmed and they show up, then all of a sudden, epigenetics say, okay, you do this and you become that, and it becomes like programming. You think about how many people in the longevity space specifically came from AI and some advanced technology backgrounds. And when they started to see how biology is becoming a little less chaos and a little more potentially programmable, all of a sudden it starts to feel like something they can get their hands around, and they're investing and they're getting involved personally, people like yourself who've switched careers. I'm going to turn over to Greg after this question, but what's one thing that's been effective? As you've talked to potential investors about to invest in biotech for the first time, what's one thing that's been effective for you to help them feel comfortable, even though they don't understand all the science, to decide that they're comfortable putting something into this space financially?
Specifically with cells, people get it intuitively, very intuitively, in my opinion, that they understand that it makes so much sense just to take healthy cells and to use it for elderly population, which their cells are not functioning very well. So it's very easy for them to understand this mechanism. And then you're coming with the full MOA, with mechanism of action, that, okay, they're losing you there, but they got the basic that understand, okay, that logic makes a lot of sense. And I understand why placenta, it makes sense. And I understand that we cannot continue to do what we are doing right now. So there has to be a solution, or we need to find a solution. So I think on the very high level, and I always tell to my investors, you need to understand it because it's actually should make sense and should be very logical. If we are not understanding it, it means that I didn't explain well. That's very easy to confuse people with mechanism of action and thousands of different. But the logic, the basic logic is there, and people understand it intuitively from my experience.
Greg?
Yaky, Jess and I are, trying to extricate what it is that would allow somebody to invest who's not got an MD or PhD. And what you said that they can understand what the CEO, what the scientist is saying, that it makes common sense. So I look at you and, somebody who's invested it over the years, you're exactly what I would say to somebody you should look for. Enormous amount of passion, that comes through in this, 40 minutes so far interview, backed by science. So we have science and we have passion. The other thing that's absolutely at the top of the list for investors looking to invest, patents. Can you protect it, or are you simply creating it so that one of the generic companies can figure out a way around it? I kiddingly, along with Jess, we say that, the research and development team for a generic company is their law firm. They're how do we go around this? So you're ticking the very important boxes. We haven't talked about how well capitalized you are, which is the other element to this. But if not, there's an opportunity to get finance because it's exciting what you're doing, and the partnership model lends itself to it. So, for our audience, these are the things you should look for. This sort of passion, the fact that the science is understandable, the mechanism of action, and that you have IP to back it up, tick, tick, tick. And, and then you want to dig a little deeper, having a conversation with Yaky. So if you're looking at this is exactly how you should think about biotech. How would you modify what I said? Or you might just agree, obviously, since I've been very complimentary.
I believe that I totally agree with what you said. And of course, a very important element, and I see it on my day-to-day, you should have also management that is able to be agile enough and to understand what's going on globally. The world is changing rapidly, and we are in a period that we need to make sure that always our strategy and what we do is still there and still accurate, and not to fall in love and think that was right 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So also agility and to able to adjust the strategy, that makes a lot of sense. But I agree with everything that you said. When I invest in other biotechs, I invest most of the time in Pluri, but when I invest in other biotechs, it's exactly the things that I look at. And biotech is going to be the biggest industry in the world. We talk about AI, but think on an aging world, which is where we are at right now. We're just in the pivot that we're seeing the increasing aging globally. In the next 20 years, that's going to be the biggest industry in the world, and people will need it. So this is why I love this industry. It's something that touches all of us. We can understand it personally, how it's impacted us, but it's also from business point of view and economy and potential for significant upside. That's going to be an amazing industry.
What's one quality you looking at a CEO if you were going to invest in their company?
Integrity, by far number one. I don't have a problem when things don't go always as you expect. It happens in our industry. But I need to know that I get the information, of course, as much as possible on public companies. In my opinion, integrity is number one. Second, I do want to see the team around him. So you have to have a strong team. Biotech and things like we do are way, way, way too complicated for one people. So the value of the team, their CTO, CSO, the clinical team is essential for success, in my opinion. And I do like to see companies that are also have the business driver. So they're going to look for partners. I believe that in our world today, companies should focus on things that they are good at and partner out the part that they don't have the competitive advantage. This is why in Pluri we are very focused today in the R&D side, because my team, these guys really, they know how to think like sales. They understand sales. And we are very focused on the R&D side and the manufacturing side. Well, this is our competitive advantage. The rest, let's partner it out. And it's okay. It's okay to have only part of the upside. And when you're going to be strong enough and have the balance sheet, go all the way, fine. But to be able to understand and to focus on the key competitive advantages. This is what I look at CEOs.
Jess, what questions would you ask Yaky to determine whether you would invest? You're creating a fund. What would be the questions you'd want answered for that fund to invest in Pluri?
I would want to understand the reasonableness of profitability. I think the science sounds incredible. I'd have to get key opinion leaders to weigh in on it and help me understand what else has been done and how you compare it to the other people and some of that stuff. But let's say that they come back like, oh no, this is the best science, period. This idea of can that science be matched with the business prowess that you talked about there? And I'd want to know about stories of people on your team and when they've been up against problems with the FDA and how they overcome those hurdles. When they have done something with other partners who have the reach to get tens of thousands of folks across the medical world to actually want to adopt this. And I would want to hear those stories of stories and philosophy on how that would happen. And Yaky, I'm going to ask you the same question. When you're investing in somebody else, let's say you didn't have Pluri or investing in someone else, what's a question that you would ask? Because there's so many people that interview well, and then there's the people that are good. When you think about this ability to work with the FDA, ability to secure business partnerships that are profitable and long term, what's a question that you would ask?
I believe that just it would be fair to say that the questions also changing according to the environment. Nowadays, as you just said, well, it's not 2021. I do want to see that you have the balance sheet, and when you're actually going to show revenues, and because we cannot now secure a $500 million plan for the next 2 years, so we need to be a little bit more modest on that. So the go-to-market is, in my opinion, extremely important. I can tell you from my own experience, Pluri until 4 years ago, we said, okay, we're going to carry it all the way, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's it's not easy, I can tell you. It's very brave, and it was right maybe for its stuff at the time. But today, and when I'm looking and I'm going to ask the CEO the same thing. Show me how much you need to invest. Show me when will be the next milestone and the probability of getting there. Me personally, the last 2.5 years, we changed the entire model to say, we're going to partner up. We're going to partner. That's okay. No worries. And I'm okay with leaving 40-50% of the asset. That's not a shame to do. But you're getting someone that is funding it very early stage. And maybe most important, in my opinion, is helping you to build and develop the right product. Small biotechs, there are a bunch of extremely smart guys. But the one that eventually being in front of the physicians and subscribe and know what the market needs, well, you should better ask their advice and to make sure that they are engaged in the process. to be able to develop the right drug. Science is cool. I love science. I mean, in a perfect world, people are just going to do science, but eventually these companies need to sell and to be profitable. And that's the main advantage of bringing partners. I'm doing it today in all of our industries. And I can tell you, it's sometimes when there's an amazing program that my team love it, and they say, okay, that's going to change the world. But when we don't have a partner on the other side, I tell them it's a no-go.
Yeah.
Okay, because if you're the only one that invests in your phase 3 or your phase 2, well, at least for me, I feel that it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's a tough industry. Biotech, it's for the strong heart and brave heart people, really. So you should make hard decisions and to be able to live in it, to live today into that.
And for people outside the industry, part of the reason Yaky is saying that, as I've learned, is those phase 3s can be absurdly expensive, and even phase 2s. And so having someone with the war chest to get you through that is what he's referring to there. You know, I'll add one more question. I would be asking the CEO those same things about what's it take to get from here to that milestone that either brings in the partner or brings in the revenue. And I would want to know what they actually think could keep them from it. Like, genuinely, if you're being truly honest, like, what keeps you at night? What keeps you up at night? And what is your plan of what you're going to do about that? And they would tell me a lot about how honest they are and how confident they are and a bunch of those things. Yaky, if people want to connect, is LinkedIn the best place, or what's best for you?
LinkedIn is perfect. They can connect directly to my profile, and also the company website. They can go to the info, and we are more than happy to speak with.
Will you tell everybody the website?
Sure, that's pluribiotech.com. And just Google Pluri and you're going to see it's probably going to be the first one. If not, tell me, I'm going to speak with mighty guys, but it should be the
Well, Greg, do you want to ask one more, or do you think we've got it for today?
I think it's very good. It's such an exciting area, and I think partnership, by the way, Yaky, is the right thing because you're such a nascent industry. It's one thing if you're creating a drug, everybody sort of gets it, but what you're doing is something unique, and so you need the validation. For Americans, anyway, I talk about companies having to make a sacrifice bunt, where they're not really trying to get themselves on base; they're trying to move everybody else forward. And by doing the right partnership, you move all of your other programs forward where you can take them further and do it. And to both of what you said, I put down the key thing that you want to see as an investor who's listening to this is how are they going to get to the inflection point where the value will be created? Either, as you've indicated, going to market or a licensing deal, and when you talk to the CEO, understand that. And to Jess's point, let's find out if they acknowledge also the risks of getting it. So I want my CEO to say, we need this amount of money to get to the inflection point. I want to have, additionally, I want to have a further 6 months so I can negotiate the license or I can figure out how to get it to market. This is what I'm going to need to do as far as regulatory, the FDA or the EU. So you want to hear that. And I want them to be honest, which you talked about, integrity, yeah. Yaky. I want them to say, and these are the risks of getting there. The FDA has been inconsistent in how they've dealt with this, or there's a manufacturing risk, which it sounds like you're addressing. So in doing that, I think you can quickly assess the integrity of the individual, the opportunity, and then I think you can invest without an MD or PhD. And I think that we've covered a lot of ground here. Right, Yaky?
Well, the last thing that I want to say, I truly believe that cells and these tiny creatures have the potential to solve some humanity's greatest challenges, starting with aging, that I think we all hit to it, but it goes even more and more and beyond, which is part of the thing that we are doing in Pluri, and that's maybe for another talk. And it's about the ability to build the right process and to make the investment, we invested a good $300 million into our technology to be able to do it in a robust way. Today, we even open our doors to, we build like a CDO division in order to make sure that, as you said, Greg, we learned a lot. We did a lot of mistakes in the last 20 years, but we learned a lot. So one of the main goals and mission, I said, okay, we should open our doors to other biotechs and companies that will be able to learn from our experience and to be able to advance quickly and effectively to the market. And that's going to do only good for all of us. I don't see these companies as competition. I see them as the front runners, all of them, to be able to make sales available for all of us. And there is a huge market and a huge potential. And I'm quite optimistic of how we're going to see things moving forward with regenerative medicine and cell therapy in the future. And
well, your optimism is contagious. So thank you for doing this today.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to speak with you. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.